Caspian Royce had faced hostile corporate takeovers, billion-dollar negotiations, and ruthless competitors. But nothing had ever terrified him like watching his 5-year-old daughter struggle to breathe. "Daddy, it hurts," LIORA whispered against his chest, her small fingers clutching Luna, her raggedy doll, as another wheezing cough racked her tiny frame. Her lips were tinged blue, and each breath sounded like a desperate plea. "We're almost there, baby girl. Daddy's got you." His voice cracked despite his effort to stay calm. The Ferrari's engine roared through Seattle's rain-soaked streets as he broke every speed limit, one hand on the wheel, the other holding his daughter close. Her golden curls were damp with fever, and those ocean blue eyes, so much like his own, were clouded with confusion and fear. The emergency room doors of Seattle Children's Hospital burst open as Caspian carried LIORA inside, her small body limp in his arms. "Help! My daughter! She can't breathe properly. Her asthma medication isn't working." The trauma team mobilized instantly. Nurses appeared like guardian angels, wheeling a gurney forward as rain dripped from Caspian's expensive suit onto the sterile floor. "When did this start?" a young resident asked, but Caspian's attention was laser-focused on LIORA's labored breathing. 20 minutes ago. She was fine. Then suddenly, his words caught in his throat as they transferred his daughter to the gurney. For a billionaire who controlled technology empires, he felt utterly powerless. "Room 3 now," someone called out. The automatic doors swung open, and Caspian followed, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd lost Helena during childbirth. He couldn't lose LIORA too. She was his entire world, the only light left after 8 years of darkness and regret. "Sir, you'll need to wait here while we stabilize her." A nurse gently but firmly placed her hand on his arm. "No, I'm not leaving her. The attending physician is on her way. Dr. Hayes is the best pediatric specialist we have." The name hit him like lightning, striking the same place twice. Dr. Hayes. It couldn't be. Not here. Not now. Not when his daughter's life hung in the balance. Through the glass partition, he watched as medical professionals swarmed around LIORA's small form. Oxygen mask, monitors beeping, tiny hands reaching for a father who couldn't reach back. And then the door opened. Time stopped. Dr. JUNIPER Hayes stepped into the room, her chestnut hair pulled back in that same imperfect bun he remembered, green eyes focused and determined. She hadn't aged a day in 8 years. If anything, she'd grown more beautiful, more confident, more everything he'd lost when his cowardice destroyed them. She hadn't seen him yet. Her entire attention was on LIORA, and watching her work, watching those gentle hands that once held his face, now fighting to save his daughter, shattered something inside his chest. For a moment that lasted eternity, Caspian Royce forgot how to breathe. Dr. JUNIPER Hayes had learned to compartmentalize emotions, a survival skill honed through 8 years of healing other people's children while her own heart remained broken. But the moment her fingers found the pulse on the small wrist of the golden-haired girl in room 3, something familiar tugged at her consciousness. "Oxygen saturation is climbing," announced Nurse Rivera, relief evident in her voice. "The nebulizer treatment is working." Juniper nodded, her trained hands checking the child's airways while her mind processed the clinical data. The little girl was beautiful, cherubic face framed by curls that caught the harsh hospital lighting like spun gold. But it was the eyes that made her pause, ocean blue eyes that seemed far too familiar. "What's her name?" Juniper asked softly, adjusting the oxygen mask with practiced gentleness. "LIORA Royce," the nurse replied, checking the chart. 5 years old. Father brought her in. He's pretty shaken up. Royce. The name hit her like ice water in her veins. Juniper's fingers involuntarily went to her grandmother's pearl necklace, the same necklace she'd worn the day she'd waited at the altar, the day her world crumbled into 1,000 pieces. "Doctor, are you all right?" Nurse Rivera's concerned voice snapped her back to the present. "Fine, just let me speak with the father." Juniper's voice was steadier than she felt. She glanced once more at LIORA, whose breathing was already improving. Those eyes, that bone structure, there was no doubt about who waited beyond that door. Juniper Hayes had imagined this moment 1,000 times over 8 years. In her fantasies, she was always eloquent, dignified, indifferent. She would show Caspian Royce exactly what he'd thrown away, exactly who he'd been foolish enough to abandon. Reality, as it often did, proved far more complicated. The moment she stepped through the door and saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, those same devastating blue eyes now filled with parental terror, every carefully constructed wall she'd built came crashing down. His dark hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled and damp from the rain. He looked like a man hanging by a thread. Caspian. His name escaped her lips before she could stop it, barely more than a whisper. He turned toward her voice like a drowning man toward shore. For a heartbeat, the hospital disappeared. There was no beeping machinery, no fluorescent lights, no antiseptic smell. There was only them, two people who had once promised each other everything and lost it all. Juniper. Her name on his lips carried 8 years of regret, hope, and something that might have been love if she let herself believe it. "Your daughter is going to be fine," she said quickly, retreating into professional mode like armor. "The attack was severe, but she's responding well to treatment. Her airways are clear now." Relief flooded his features so completely that for a moment he looked like the young man who used to make her laugh until her sides ached. "Thank God. Thank you. We'll need to keep her for observation overnight," Juniper continued, deliberately avoiding his eyes. "And we should discuss adjusting her medication protocol." The clinical words created distance, safety. But when Caspian whispered, "I thought I was going to lose her too," the vulnerability in his voice nearly undid her completely. The pediatric ward at 2 a.m. carried a different energy, softer, more intimate, where whispered conversations held more weight than daytime declarations. Juniper found herself checking on room 312 for the 3rd time in an hour, telling herself it was standard protocol for severe asthma cases. LIORA was sleeping peacefully now, her breathing steady and unlabored. Luna, the raggedy doll, was tucked securely under her small arm. But it wasn't the patient that drew Juniper's attention. It was the man slumped in the uncomfortable visitor's chair beside the bed. Caspian hadn't left his daughter's side for 6 hours. His expensive suit jacket hung on the chair back, his white shirt wrinkled, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that were somehow more muscled than she remembered. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and exhaustion carved lines around his eyes that spoke of more than just tonight's crisis. "You should go home and get some rest," Juniper said quietly from the doorway. "She's stable now." His head lifted, and those blue eyes that had haunted her dreams met hers. "I can't. What if something happens? What if she wakes up and I'm not here?" The raw vulnerability in his voice was so different from the confident businessman she'd once known, and so achingly familiar to the man who used to worry about her walking alone to her car after late hospital shifts during medical school. "She'll be fine," Juniper assured him, stepping into the room despite every instinct telling her to maintain distance. "The night nurses check every 15 minutes and I'm staying late tonight anyway." "Why?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. Juniper's fingers found her pearl necklace. "Because that's what good doctors do." Caspian studied her face in the dim light filtering through the blinds. "You became everything you dreamed of becoming," he said softly. "I always knew you would." The compliment shouldn't have affected her, but it did. "What about you? Technology empire, billions of dollars. Seems like you got everything you wanted too." Something flickered across his features. Pain, regret, maybe both. "Did I?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Juniper wanted to ask about his wife, about the life he'd chosen over her, about whether the sacrifices had been worth it. Instead, she focused on the sleeping child between them. "She's beautiful," she murmured, genuine warmth softening her voice. "She has your eyes." "Helena's smile, though," Caspian said quietly. She died during childbirth." The simple statement hit Juniper like a physical blow. All these years, she'd imagined him living happily with the woman he'd chosen over her, building the perfect life, that apparently didn't include room for a small-town girl studying medicine. The reality was far more tragic. "I'm sorry," she whispered, meaning it completely. "I didn't know." "Leora's all I have left," he continued, his voice barely audible. "When I saw her struggling to breathe tonight, for a moment I understood what people mean when they say their heart stops." Juniper watched him trace gentle patterns on his daughter's blanket, the same absent gesture he used to make on her skin during lazy Sunday mornings. Some things apparently never change. "You're a good father," she said, surprised by how much she meant it. "I'm trying to be." His eyes met hers again. "I'm trying to be better than—" He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital room windows when Leora's eyes fluttered open, immediately searching for her father. What she found instead was a woman with kind green eyes sitting in the chair beside her bed, reading a medical chart. "Hi, sweetheart," Juniper said softly, setting the chart aside. "I'm Dr. Hayes. How are you feeling?" Leora studied her with the intense curiosity only 5-year-olds possessed. "You smell like flowers," she said matter-of-factly, "and you have sad eyes like Daddy." The observation was so unexpectedly perceptive that Juniper felt her breath catch. "Do I?" "Uh-huh." Leora clutched Luna closer. "Are you the doctor who made me feel better?" "I helped, yes, but you were very brave." "Daddy was scared," Leora whispered conspiratorially. "I could tell 'cause he got that crinkle between his eyebrows that he gets when he misses Mommy." Juniper's heart squeezed. This child was far too intuitive for her own good. "Where is your daddy now?" "Getting coffee. He doesn't like hospital coffee, but he drinks it anyway when he's worried." Leora sat up carefully, her breathing easy and natural now. "Luna thinks you're pretty." Despite everything, Juniper found herself smiling, the first genuine smile she'd managed in hours. "Luna has very good taste. She also thinks you know Daddy from before I was born." The innocent statement hit like a sledgehammer. Juniper's training kicked in, keeping her expression neutral even as her pulse quickened. "Why would Luna think that?" Leora tilted her head, studying Juniper with those impossibly blue eyes. "Because when Daddy looks at you, he gets the same face he makes when he looks at the picture in his wallet." "What picture?" Before Leora could answer, Caspian appeared in the doorway carrying 2 cups of coffee, stopping short when he saw Juniper. The tension that immediately filled the room was palpable, even to a 5-year-old. "Daddy, the flower lady is nice," Leora announced cheerfully. "Luna likes her." "Flower lady?" Caspian's eyebrows rose as he approached the bed. "She smells like the lavender garden at home," Leora explained, as if this made perfect sense. Juniper felt heat rise in her cheeks. The same lavender perfume she'd worn since college, since the first time Caspian had told her. It reminded him of summer evenings and promises whispered in the dark. "Dr. Hayes was just checking on you, baby girl," Caspian said carefully, not quite meeting Juniper's eyes. "I was telling her about the picture in your wallet," Leora said innocently. The coffee cup in Caspian's hand trembled slightly. "Leora, the one of the pretty lady in the white dress that you look at sometimes when you think I'm sleeping." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Juniper felt the world tilt slightly off its axis. After 8 years, he still carried their engagement photo. The picture taken just weeks before everything fell apart, when they were planning their future and believing in forever. Juniper started to retreat, but Leora's small voice stopped her. "Don't go yet. Please, I want to draw you a picture." From the bedside table, Leora grabbed a coloring book and crayons that a nurse must have brought. With careful concentration, she began sketching something that made both adults freeze. She was drawing a family, a tall man, a woman with flower smell, and a little girl in the middle, all holding hands under a rainbow. "This is us," Leora announced proudly. "Luna says this is how families are supposed to look." The hospital cafeteria at noon buzzed with the controlled chaos of medical professionals grabbing quick meals between life and death decisions. Juniper sat alone at a corner table, mechanically stirring her untouched soup, while her mind replayed Leora's innocent revelations from that morning. You look like someone who just discovered her patient's father is carrying torch pictures, Dr. Marcus Williams observed, sliding his tray across from her. At 58, the veteran nurse had seen enough hospital drama to fill several soap operas. Marcus, I can't... Child, I've been watching people navigate matters of the heart in these halls for 30 years, and in all that time, I've never seen a man look at a woman the way that billionaire looks at you. Juniper's spoon clattered against her bowl. You don't understand. He left me at the altar 8 years ago. Literally left me standing there while 300 wedding guests watched my life fall apart. Marcus's weathered face softened with understanding. And now his little girl is under your care. She drew us as a family, Marcus. This innocent child who doesn't know our history drew us holding hands like we belong together. Juniper's voice cracked. How am I supposed to maintain professional boundaries when she keeps saying things that make it impossible to forget what we used to mean to each other? Maybe, Marcus said gently. The question isn't how to forget, but whether you should. Before Juniper could respond, her pager buzzed urgently. Room 312, LIORA. The race through the corridors felt endless, her heart hammering against her ribs. When she burst through the door, she found LIORA sitting up in bed, breathing normally, but crying quietly, while Caspian held her hand, his face etched with worry. What happened? Juniper demanded, immediately checking the monitors. She's fine physically, Caspian said carefully, but she asked me about the picture. LIORA looked up at Juniper with tear-bright eyes. I asked Daddy why the pretty lady in the picture looks sad. And he got that face again. The same face you get when you think nobody's watching. The innocent words hit like artillery fire. This child was dismantling 8 years of carefully constructed emotional defenses with the devastating honesty only children possessed. Sweetheart, Juniper said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings about things that happened before you were born. Did you know each other when you were young like in the movies? LIORA asked, her curiosity undiminished by the emotional tension filling the room. Juniper's eyes met Caspian's over their daughter's head, his daughter. The reminder hit her like cold water. This wasn't her family, no matter what LIORA drew in her coloring book. We did know each other, Caspian said quietly. Dr. Hayes was very important to me once. What happened? LIORA's question was simple, devastating. The silence stretched unbearably. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes fear and family pressure and cowardice destroy the most precious things in life? Sometimes, Juniper said carefully, people make mistakes when they're scared, and sometimes those mistakes hurt people we care about very much. LIORA nodded solemnly, processing this with the gravity of a much older child. Then with the startling directness of innocence, she asked, but can't you say sorry and try again? That's what you tell me when I break something. The question hung in the air like a prayer neither adult was ready to answer. The discharge papers lay unsigned on Juniper's desk as she stared out her office window at the Seattle skyline. LIORA was medically cleared to go home, but something nagged at her professional instincts. The attack had been too severe, too resistant to standard treatment. They needed to discuss long-term management, but that would mean more interactions with Caspian, and she wasn't sure her carefully reconstructed heart could handle it. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Hayes? LIORA's voice was barely above a whisper. Juniper turned to find the little girl standing in her doorway, clutching Luna and looking impossibly small in an oversized hospital gown. Sweetheart, you should be in your room. Where's your daddy? He's talking to the scary billing lady, LIORA said, padding into the office. I wanted to give you something before we go home. She held out a carefully folded piece of paper, the family drawing she'd made that morning, now decorated with additional details. Hearts floating around the figures, a sun with a smiley face, and words written in careful kindergarten letters. Thank you for making me better. Love, LIORA. This is beautiful, Juniper said, her throat tight. But you should keep it. Luna says you need it more than me, Leora replied, with the matter-of-fact wisdom of childhood. She climbed onto the chair across from Juniper's desk, swinging her legs. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you have kids?" The innocent question hit like a scalpel to the heart. "No, sweetheart, I don't." "Why not?" "You're good with kids, and you smell nice, and you have gentle hands like my mommy did." Juniper's breath caught. "You remember your mommy?" "Not really, but Daddy tells me stories. He says she would have loved me very much." Leora tilted her head thoughtfully. "I think she would have liked you too." Before Juniper could respond, Caspian appeared in the doorway, his expression a mixture of relief at finding his daughter and something else, something that looked dangerously like longing, as his eyes took in the scene of Leora chattering comfortably with Juniper. "There you are, little escape artist," he said gently. "Dr. Hayes is very busy. We shouldn't be bothering her." "She's not bothering me," Juniper said quickly, then immediately regretted the warmth in her voice. "I gave her my picture," Leora announced proudly, "and I asked her why she doesn't have kids, and she got sad eyes again." The color drained from Caspian's face. "Leora, that's not... We don't ask personal questions like that." "It's okay," Juniper said softly, then looked directly at Leora. "Sometimes things don't work out the way we plan them. Sometimes life takes us on different paths than we expected." "But you could still have kids," Leora said with 5-year-old logic. "You're not old like Mrs. Patterson next door. She has grey hair and talks to her cats." Despite everything, Juniper found herself almost smiling. "It's complicated, sweetheart. And grown-ups always say that when they don't want to explain things," Leora observed sagely. "But I think you'd be a good mom. You have mom hands." "Mom hands?" Caspian asked, his voice slightly strained. "You know, gentle but strong. Like when she checked my breathing, I wasn't scared because her hands felt safe." Leora looked between the two adults with startling perception. "Like how your hands feel safe too, Daddy." The moment stretched taut with unspoken implications. Here was a child who had lost her mother, a father terrified of losing his daughter, and a woman who had given up her dreams of family 8 years ago. The cruel irony wasn't lost on any of them. "We should go," Caspian said finally, his voice rough. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes, for everything." As he moved to collect Leora, she turned back to Juniper one last time. "Will we see you again?" The question every adult in the room knew shouldn't be answered hung in the air like a promise neither Caspian nor Juniper was ready to make. 3 days later, Juniper's phone rang at 11:47 p.m. The caller ID made her heart skip. Caspian Royce. "Juniper?" His voice was strained, desperate. "I'm sorry to call so late, but Leora's having another attack. It's worse than before. I'm bringing her in." She was already reaching for her clothes before he finished speaking. "I'll meet you in the ER." The drive through empty Seattle streets felt like déjà vu, but when she arrived at the hospital, the scene was far more serious than 3 nights ago. Leora was barely conscious, her lips blue despite the oxygen mask, her small body fighting for every breath. "When did this start?" Juniper demanded, her hands immediately checking vital signs while her heart hammered against her ribs. "An hour ago," Caspian said, his voice breaking. "I gave her the rescue inhaler, the nebulizer, everything. Nothing worked. I thought I was going to lose her." The monitors showed what Juniper had feared. This wasn't just asthma. Something else was happening, something that required immediate intervention. "I need to intubate," she said to the trauma team. "Now." For the next 20 minutes, Juniper fought for Leora's life with every skill she possessed. The little girl who had drawn them as a family, who had asked innocent questions that shattered emotional walls, was dying in front of them. "Come on, sweetheart," Juniper whispered as she worked. "Come back to us." Finally, mercifully, the monitors stabilized. Leora's breathing eased, though she remained unconscious. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Juniper found Caspian in the family waiting room, his head in his hands. "She's stable," she said quietly, "but we need to talk." He looked up, his eyes red with exhaustion and fear. "Is she going to be okay?" "This isn't standard asthma, Caspian. The severity, the resistance to treatment, I think we're dealing with something more complex. She needs specialized testing, possibly surgery." The words hit him like physical blows. Surgery? There's a possibility of a structural abnormality in her airways. It would explain everything. Why the attacks are so severe, why standard treatments aren't working. Juniper sat beside him, her professional composure cracking. I know a specialist in Boston who... No, the word was sharp, final. I'm not taking her across the country for experimental procedures. I can't risk losing her. Caspian, if we don't address this, the next attack could what? Kill her. His voice broke on the words. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent every night since Helena died, terrified that I'll wake up and she'll be gone too? The raw emotion in his voice shattered something inside Juniper's chest. This wasn't the confident businessman who had once chosen duty over love. This was a broken father clinging to the only family he had left. I won't let that happen, she said fiercely. Whatever this is, whatever she needs, I'll find a way to treat her here. I promise you that. He stared at her, searching her face. Why? Why would you do that for us after what I did to you? The question hung between them like a bridge. Neither had been brave enough to cross. 8 years of hurt, anger, and regret crystallized into this moment. A sick child, 2 broken hearts, and the terrible possibility of redemption. Because, Juniper said, her voice barely above a whisper, some things are more important than the past. And that little girl in there, she doesn't deserve to pay for our mistakes. Caspian's hand found hers, and for the first time in 8 years, she didn't pull away. Juniper, I need you to know. Don't, she interrupted. Not now. Right now, the only thing that matters is saving LIORA. But even as she said it, they both knew that saving his daughter might just save them all. 2 weeks later, LIORA's surgery was a complete success. The structural abnormality had been corrected, and for the first time in her young life, she could breathe freely. Juniper had assembled the best pediatric surgical team on the West Coast, calling in favors and working 18-hour days to ensure everything was perfect. Now, watching LIORA color contentedly in her hospital bed while humming a Disney song, Juniper felt a profound sense of completion she hadn't experienced in years. The flower lady is here, LIORA announced happily as Juniper entered the room for final discharge rounds. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Juniper asked, checking the surgical site with gentle hands. Like I can breathe all the way to my toes, LIORA giggled. Daddy says that's how breathing is supposed to feel. Caspian stood by the window, watching the interaction with an expression Juniper couldn't quite read. Over the past 2 weeks, he'd been a constant presence, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair, reading LIORA stories, and slowly, carefully, rebuilding bridges with Juniper through shared concern for his daughter. I have something for you, LIORA said, pulling out a new drawing. This one showed 3 figures standing in front of a house with a white picket fence and a garden full of lavender flowers. This is our family when I get big. LIORA, Caspian said gently, we talked about this. But Luna says it's true, LIORA insisted. She says the flower lady's heart matches Daddy's heart, and when hearts match, people are supposed to be together. Juniper felt tears prick her eyes. Sweetheart, sometimes grown-up hearts are more complicated than Luna understands. No, they're not, LIORA said with 5-year-old certainty. Daddy told me he was too scared before, but brave people try again when something is important. Caspian moved closer, his eyes never leaving Juniper's face. She's right, you know, about the trying again part. Caspian, 8 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life, he said quietly. I let fear and family pressure convince me that I wasn't good enough for you, that you deserved better than a coward who couldn't stand up to his parents. Juniper's hand went to her pearl necklace. You left me standing at the altar in front of everyone I loved. I know, and I've regretted it every single day since. His voice was raw with emotion. I married Helena because it was expected, but I never loved her the way I loved you, the way I still love you. You kept our engagement photo, she whispered. I've carried it everywhere for 8 years. It's the only picture I have of real happiness. He stepped closer. Juniper, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a second chance, not just for me, but for us, for the family we could be. Leora watched the exchange with bright, hopeful eyes. See? Luna was right. Hearts do match. Juniper looked at this man who had broken her heart, and somehow, through his daughter's love and need, had helped her heal it. She thought about the past 2 weeks, how natural it felt to worry about Leora together, how right it seemed when Caspian brought her coffee during long surgical waits, how complete she felt when the three of them were together. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if we hurt each other again? What if I'm not good enough to be Leora's mother?" "You're already her mother in every way that matters," Caspian said. "She lights up when you walk into a room. And as for hurting each other, maybe that's what love is, taking the risk because the alternative is living half a life." Leora suddenly scrambled out of bed and took both their hands, pulling them together. "Now you have to kiss like in the movies, and then we can go home and be a real family." Through tears and laughter, Juniper found herself in Caspian's arms, 8 years of heartbreak melting away as his lips found hers. It was a kiss that tasted of forgiveness, second chances, and promises they were finally brave enough to keep. "So," Caspian murmured against her lips, "will you marry us?" "Yes," Juniper whispered, looking down at Leora's beaming face. "Yes, to all of it. Because sometimes the best families aren't born. They're chosen, fought for, and built on the foundation of love strong enough to weather any storm." 2 years later, the garden behind their Bellevue home was in full bloom, lavender bushes swaying gently in the warm June breeze. Juniper knelt among the purple flowers, her wedding ring catching the afternoon sunlight as she helped 7-year-old Leora plant new seedlings. "Mum, do you think baby brother will like lavender too?" Leora asked, her small hands carefully patting soil around a young plant. Juniper's hand instinctively went to her 6-month bump, where their son was currently practicing what felt like soccer moves. "I think he'll love everything about this garden, especially because his big sister helped create it. And because it smells like you," Leora added matter-of-factly. "Daddy always says that's his favorite smell in the whole world." From the kitchen window came the sound of Caspian's laughter, mixing with Marcus's distinctive chuckle. The older man had become their honorary grandfather, spending most weekends helping Caspian perfect his Italian cooking while regaling them with stories from his 35 years at the hospital. "Dr. Mom," Leora had taken to calling her that ever since the adoption papers were finalized 6 months ago. "Do you think Luna knew all along that we were supposed to be a family?" Juniper looked at the raggedy doll, propped carefully against the garden fence, keeping watch over their planting session. In 2 years, Luna had been through countless tea parties, bedtime stories, and medical procedures, but remained Leora's most trusted confidant. "I think Luna is very wise about matters of the heart," Juniper said diplomatically. "That's what I think too." Leora sat back on her heels, surveying their work with satisfaction. "She also says, the baby is going to have your green eyes and Daddy's smile. Does she now?" "Uh-huh. And she says he's going to be a doctor like you, but he'll also build things like Daddy wanted to before he had to run the company." Sometimes Leora's insights were so startlingly accurate that Juniper wondered if the little girl really did have some special intuition about people and their dreams. The back door opened, and Caspian appeared carrying a tray of iced tea and Marcus's famous chocolate chip cookies. His sleeves were rolled up, flour dusted his dark hair, and he wore the same expression of contentment that had become his default over the past 2 years. "How are my girls doing out here?" he asked, setting the tray on the garden table. "We're teaching baby brother about lavender," Leora announced, "and Mum's telling me about how Luna knows everything." Caspian's eyes met Juniper's over their daughter's head, filled with the same wonder that never seemed to fade. 2 years of marriage had only deepened their connection, especially as they'd learned to navigate parenthood together and build the family they'd both dreamed of. "Well, Luna certainly knew what she was talking about when she said hearts could match," he said, pulling Juniper to her feet and wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands settling protectively over their growing son. "Daddy, you're being mushy again," Leora giggled. "I'm allowed to be mushy with my wife." Caspian declared, pressing a kiss to Juniper's temple, especially when she's growing our son and helping our daughter plant the most beautiful garden in Washington. Juniper leaned back against his chest, watching LIORA carefully arrange her gardening tools in perfect rows. This life, their life, was everything she'd stopped allowing herself to dream about after that devastating day 8 years ago. "No regrets," Caspian murmured against her ear. "Only one," she said, turning in his arms. His eyebrows rose in concern. "What's that? That we waited so long to find our way back to each other?" His smile was radiant. "Well, Luna would probably say we found each other exactly when we were supposed to." As if summoned by her name, LIORA looked up from her gardening. "Luna says the baby's going to come early, and he's going to love our family just as much as I do." Juniper and Caspian exchanged amused glances. With LIORA's track record for accuracy, they'd probably better have their hospital bag ready sooner than expected. "Tell Luna we love her too," Juniper said, settling into Caspian's arms as the lavender scent surrounded them like a blessing. Some love stories begin with lightning. Others grow slowly, like lavender in rich soil, taking time to establish roots before blooming into something beautiful, lasting and true. The end.